Alright, we're going to do the bracha. If you guys understand. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan haTorah. Amen. Please be seated. Alright, so last week we ended off chapter 12. We saw Samuel kind of giving a little farewell speech and doing a bit of a miracle with rain in May-June side for Shahu or in summer during the time of the wheat harvest. And that doesn't happen, and then it goes straight into a different section over the next 3 chapters, chapter 13, chapter 14, and chapter 15. We kind of zone in on this little section here that's broken up in the book, is that this is where we see Shahu or Saul make his mistakes. Okay? So we need to pay attention to the fact that, again, like Moses, there are moments where there is misrepresentation. I want you to try and think about, as we read, what is it that keeps tripping Saul up? What is the thing that's holding him back? Okay? You'll see it quite clearly once you are trying to look out for it. But he gets himself stuck, and this is now something I think we obviously are warning that we need to take care of, take heart to, and go, all right, well, if this is me, I need to change because it doesn't really work out well for him. Okay. So chapter 13, verse 1. Says Shaul was, what does it have in your Bible?
Click. He was 30 years old when he became king.
That's weird. Right? In the Hebrew itself, the text itself lacks a number. So they pull from a traditional element to try and give a date. Here, this in your Bible, there is no date. So if you see it in the CJB and it looks like they forgot something, it's because this was, again, this moment or this verse was translated directly. So the actual text isn't there. So we don't really know what this section is when he started his reign, how old he really was. Now, why would that be included, do you think?
You mean the omission? Why would
Yeah.
the omission be?
Why don't we just say, well, when Saul was reigning,
Well,
or from the beginning of his reign, he ruled for 2 years. We could have phrased this differently, surely.
yeah.
What was Saul's biggest sort of, well, did he come into authority quite naturally?
No.
So when did he start his reign? When Samuel anointed him and he was still looking for donkeys? Did he come into his reign when he was hiding behind farming implements maybe? Did he come into his reign really when he was going out to war? When they then inaugurated him as a king?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and yes. Okay, do they all happen right bang after each other, or was there a little bit of time by the way the writing seems to take place? Time in between. Maybe this is just a little illustration to show you that, hang on a second, we don't really know at what point or when you want to take the fact that he actually took the kingship upon himself. What the writer is trying to do is trying to get you to a point and saying, all right, when Shaul was so many years old, when he began his reign, he had ruled Israel for 2 years. So roughly, according to where Samuel, we presume, who's doing the writing, is leaving an open-ended statement. He goes, when he chose 3,000 of Israel's men, 2,000 of them were with Shaul at Michmas in the hills of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Givat Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent back to their respective tents. All right, so we don't know exactly when he started or whether it was close to this, but he's been ruling we don't know where, we don't know how, for 2 years, and now all of a sudden we've got men out in the field. What does that tell you?
What Shmuel prophesied happened. He said that he will take their men and cause them to be his bodyguard and run ahead of him, stuff like that.
Okay, so there was a declaration that there was going to be army. And if we have army in the field, does that tell you he's preparing for something?
Yeah.
Most likely, right? It says, Jonathan assassinated the governor of the Philistine in Gibeah. The Philistine heard of it, so Shaul had the shofar sounded throughout the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. All Israel heard that Shaul had assassinated the governor of the Philistine, and thus made Israel a stench to the nostrils of the Philistine. Alright, who killed who?
Jonathan killed the governor.
So Jonathan killed the governor. Yes? A couple of verses later, Saul killed the governor. Who was it?
It was Jonathan.
It was Jonathan. Okay, so why did they attribute it to Saul?
Jonathan was wondering. Jonathan reported to him. So.
Jonathan was his son. Who orders assassinations generally? The king or the prince?
The king.
Generally the king. So anything that Jonathan does is a reflection on his father. Okay? To the point where later he'll actually take credit for some of the things that Jonathan did, but we'll see it as we go. So the people rallied behind Shaul in Gilgal, while the Philistines assembled themselves together to make war on Israel. 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen in an army as large as the number of sands of grains on the seashore. Alright, do a little comparison. How many men did Shaul have at Michmas?
600.
How many did Shaul have?
600.
No, look at this one. 2,000, right? 2,000 men, and Jonathan had?
1,000.
1,000. Alright, and then he gives a rallying cry hoping to get more support, because who is facing him? 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen. Now, before we get into that, the word, many of the rabbis believe it's an over-exaggeration. Okay, because the same word that can be used somehow translates as, let me not say that because I'm not sure, it's ambiguous. So there could be a smaller number or a bigger number, okay? A lot of them say this armies this size in antiquity couldn't possibly have existed because the populations were a lot smaller. That's one of their arguments. We really don't know, okay? It's an ambiguous statement, so just keep that in the back of your mind. What I want you to see is an army as large as the sand of grains on the seashore. Have we ever seen something like this before?
The sand of grains part or the army?
The army, as many as grains of sand on the seashore. Did Joshua not come against an army that they said numbered as the grains of the sand on the seashore? Now, why would that be important? When we made a promise, when God made a covenant with somebody, He said you're going to be as, if you can count the stars, or
Yeah.
the grains of sand on the seashore. So the same thing we acknowledge then as we acknowledge now is that we're going to have a counterfeit idea. That which is supposed to be a covenant number with God and with His people, saying we number as many as, the enemy is as much as well. Alright? From the first basis level, now we need to ask ourselves, the only reason we have victory is because we are in covenant with our God. First thing, remember, an underlying factor with every battle that you see in antiquity is whose God is greater. The God of the Philistine are coming out against the God of Israel. They didn't learn their lesson not too long ago. Remember with Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they lost the ark, their God bowed down. It wasn't long ago, before Shaul was called king, that they were sending up gifts and saying, okay, we don't want to mess with that God anymore, and here we are again repeating the same cycle. What does that tell you about people?
don't really learn from the mistakes.
No, we don't. We don't really learn from our mistakes. This is not an Israel problem. This is a people problem. Sin cycle. Sin, what happens?
Consequence.
Consequence? Should bring me to do what? Repent, teshuvah. I need to repent, I need to turn back to God. What happens after I make teshuvah? Get forgiven and I'm happy. It's not complicated. Smiley face. And I go and do the same thing again. Think about your life. How many times have you prayed to God to help you out of a situation that you created, say you're sorry, and then He goes, okay, I'm here, I'm going to set you free, and then a little while goes on, and you fall back into the same trap? So how do we get out of this? Because as much as you try, in your own strengths, you don't change. Agreed? Okay, so how do we change?
God changes our heart.
Right. We ask the Holy Spirit to come in, we ask God to change us, and then this starts to no longer affect us. We start to bypass that. And that which has affected us before doesn't. We are to recognize it for what it is. We can look at a situation before we make the mistake and we can go, I remember last time I did that, it hurt me. I don't think I want to go through that again. Father, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to do things your way now because that got me into trouble. And then all of a sudden you start to walk away from something that you couldn't walk away from before. You know, we say it and it is as simple as a choice. When God says to you, I put before you blessing and curse, right? Life and blessing, curse and death. He says choose. Choose life. And for some reason we just don't. We just make the same mistakes. How many of you think that if you had a do-over, you could do your life over again? That you would do it better without God? How many of you think you're gonna make new mistakes in different ways and end up in the same place? You know, we say things like, you know, if I could go back in time and what I know now. And then you stop and you think, and then let's be honest with yourself. If you had to go back without God, I think we'd probably just be sitting in the same place going, strike two. You see, this, from God's viewpoint, is the reason He needed to come and give us Torah. He needed to come and give us the Holy Spirit, because we, as His creation, are stuck. That second cycle. Hopefully this works. That's before we get to the fall. Perfection. Then comes, okay, the fall, Adam and Eve eating an apple or a citrus or a gem squash. Bit silly, we don't really know. And then what happens? There's some weird people. Yes, there's some odd thoughts out there. Alright, what happens? Alright, so because of the fall we get death. Now God's got to go, how do I get him back?
But before you can send Yeshua, sends Torah.
Why is Torah there? Right, it's a lamp unto my feet. So if I don't understand what I did wrong here, disobedience brings death. I need to teach you what I'm about. I need to teach you what's right and wrong. And if I understand it, I already know what I'm aiming at. Right? And then we realize just because we know what's right and wrong, let's face it, you don't always choose right. So how do I get you from there? You know the difference, but somehow you're still stuck.
That's why you send Yeshua and the Holy Spirit.
Why do I say you're sure?
Because someone has to pay for my sin.
Because the wages of sin is death, and I need someone to atone for me. I need saving. The Torah, according to Romans, is pure, righteous, and holy.
But I got you, constant.
Right. It is perfect.
I got you, constant.
Right? It's perfect. The problem is, you're not. So because you cannot keep this 100%, doesn't make the instruction wrong, it makes you wrong. You need saving. So once we get saved, I'm still stuck. I've been saved, I know what's right and I know what's wrong. But there's something missing. There's a heart condition change. Something that has to happen internally. Let's do it this way. And this combination is going to get me closer to the beginning. Right? So instead of repeating this cycle, I need to fall into God's cycle and His plan for redemption, of recreation. You with me? So when we see people repeating the same mistakes, I want you to see this. Without God, you see, if I bring in the fall, and this is where the Philistines were stuck, they don't have covenant, they don't have Torah. They don't have any sort of sacrificial system to understand the cost of what their sin is. So what do they understand?
Just war and death.
They understand? Is it just war and death? Is that the pinnacle of Philistine civilization?
Iron.
War, death, and iron. They were civilized. They focused on technology. They developed themselves. And they looked down at everybody else who didn't have what they have and told them they had nothing. Sound familiar? So many people, what does it say? People at the end are going to be chasing knowledge. Running back to and fro, trying to improve their lives, trying to do so much, but they will not go to the source of perfection. So we repeat the cycle. And if you take God out of a sin cycle, well, sin and consequence are kind of blurred lines. Because there's no difference between, well, let me put it to you this way. What you call a sin, I don't. You don't think it's wrong to, let's be crazy, marry 3 people. You think it's okay. Or let's not maybe be that extreme. Why don't you, move in together, live together, play house for a while, and one day when you get around to it, maybe you get married. And we call that sinful. And then they go, no, this is just normal. And it's blasé. You come in and you say, listen, you can't really do that. And they say, please, I don't need you, I don't need your God, I'm just fine. It's only when they repeat that cycle when they say, no, that relationship doesn't work out, and then what happens? You break up, you move on. Meet someone new, go do the same thing again, and then that breaks up, and then you move on. How many of you can still remember your first breakup and you didn't even maybe go through that cycle? Now what happens if we get to the place where we start to share intimacy on a level that only a husband and wife should share, that openness and that togetherness, and then we come up and we rip that apart and we go, well, hopefully next time it will be easier for you to move on. Maybe it won't affect you so much, or don't worry about it. We spoke about it on Shabbat. I've been talking about it for some time. That level of being vulnerable again, the reason we don't is because we've had, in one more shape or form or another, we've had, when we were open and vulnerable, we've ripped and broken, right? So now you're not going to do that again. Well, you shouldn't, but how many people carry on that cycle until they find what they think they're looking for? And even in their marriages, they carry their scars and then they go through it because God's not in it to change them, to heal them, to fix them, to get them to the next stage. You guys with me? There's so many things that we can see, that we can glean from the passages of what's going on here, is that it's not just about a battle between good and evil, God versus God. It's not just about redemption. It's God crying out to His creation, trying to show them who God is so that they can get saved. And He will use what you understand. If you're trusting in your God, you're going to fall. Sin equals consequence. What should bring repentance, other people just ignore. If I take God out of everything, it's easy. Okay? So here we have a battle going on. And it says here, reading from the end of verse 5, they came up and pitched camp at Michmas, east of Beth Evan. The men of Israel saw that their options were limited, and the people felt hard pressed, that they were hiding themselves in caves, thickets, crevices, watchtowers, and cisterns. Now, I've been in a cistern. I have not once thought it was a good idea to go and hide in one. But you're thinking of the darkest hole you could possibly find and hope that no one sees you. I want you to understand the level of hopelessness they felt when they saw that army. Now, what was their cry? Their heart's cry was that they could have a king so they could do what?
Be like the other nations.
And he can lead them into battle. They didn't say we want the absence of battle, we want peace on all sides, we want a king that will lead us. Here's the battle. Well, some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan to the territory of Gad and Gilad. They were like, we're going to get completely out of the way, there's no way we're going to face them. But Shaul was still in Gilgal, where all the people were eager to follow him. He waited 7 days as Shmuel had instructed, but Shmuel didn't go to Gilgal. So the army began to drift away from him. Shaul said, bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings, and he offered the burnt offering. Pause. Samuel says, wait 7 days, I'm coming. I need to make an offering before you go to war. Burnt offering equals what?
Surrender.
Complete dedication. Everything of me goes up. Peace offering? Everything is fine between us. Okay? So if that's the attitude before I go to war, and I'm trusting that God will go out against the God of the Philistine, He's going to deal with their army, He's going to deal with their numbers, and I'm trusting in that. That's why I stand. And He's waiting, and the army is waiting. Then all of a sudden the army go, it's been 7 days, Samuel's not coming. And they start to leave. If Samuel's not coming, then we don't have a chance. Because he's the prophet, he's the judge. If he's not here, what are we going to do? So, Shaul's response?
Please the people.
Force the issue.
I will do something I know I'm not supposed to because I don't want the people to leave. I want you to see this. He is more concerned about what the people are doing and less concerned about what God is doing. Okay? You're going to see this time and time again. So he makes the offering. As soon as he had finished sacrificing the burnt offering, there was Shmuel. He had come. And Shaul went out to meet and greet him. Shmuel said, "What have you done?" Shaul answered, "I saw that the army was drifting away from me, that you hadn't come during the time appointed, and that the Philistine had assembled at Michmas. I said, now the Philistine will fall on me at Gilgal, and I haven't asked the favor of Adonai. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering." Right? I'm so scared that God was not going to win me victory or give me victory because we didn't make an offering. Is that logical? Can you think of maybe a situation in your life where you look at something and go, "Oh, God's not listening to me because I didn't do this"? And I'm not talking about disobeying a direct instruction. I'm not talking about rebellion. How many times does your mind quickly go to the fact of, "Oh, God didn't hear me, God doesn't love me because I didn't do this"? You ever had that? Sometimes you chase your head and you're like, "I must have done something wrong, I feel guilty, there must have been something, I can't do it, I don't know, there must be there." Whose reputation is on is on offer here?
God's reputation. Yeah.
So when God pitches up, they'll know about it. It's his job to protect Shaul. It's Shaul's job to stand up. Samuel's job is to be there to speak the words of God. And yet somehow we get stuck in our head that, "Oh no, well, unless I do this right this very moment, I'm a dead man. God will not be with me, and the Philistines are going to get me." What does that sound like to you, besides people pleasing?
Faith in God.
You're struggling with a little bit of fear, yeah? I don't have an army, they're running away. No one's listening to me, I'm their king. I better do this or else I won't have anybody else to back me. And in your push to keep people close by, you break Torah. Time and time again, you will see in scripture, you will see someone who looks at something and they get fearful and they act out of fear, and that's the very thing that causes their demise. Pharaoh looked at the number of Hebrews and he said, "There's too many of them, let's imprison them before they overthrow me." It was because of the imprisonment he got overthrown. Jeroboam later will say, if they go down to Jerusalem and they worship, they're never going to come back. God appointed him chief over the 10 tribes. So what did he do? He set up 2 altars, and that's when he lost his kingdom. He broke Torah. You see, sometimes we get pushed into a corner, and instead of going, "Okay, Father, you're going to pitch up now. I just need to be patient. I just need to wait for you. I just need to let you do something. We want to make a plan. Let's just get this done. Let's just bend the rules a little bit here. And if I can bend the rules, make an exception, everyone's going to be happy. It's for the greater good. It's fine." But in me bending the rules, I misrepresent God. And if I misrepresent God, I've already lost. The prophet pitches up. You're not supposed to be making offerings. You're a king. You have no right. This is a priest's job. Don't think that now all of a sudden we can just sort of jump and change the rules as we see fit. There are certain places and certain things that we need to stick to, no matter how we feel. Shmuel said to Shaul, "You did a foolish thing. You did not observe the mitzvah of Adonai which he gave you. If you had, Adonai would have set up your kingship over Israel forever. But as it is, your kingship will not be established. Adonai has sought for himself a man after his own heart, and Adonai has appointed him to be prince over his people. Because you did not observe what Adonai ordered you to do. Because you did not keep to Torah. your kingship is going to be removed. Now, does that happen now, immediately? No. There's going to be a slow process, and what you're going to see, the demise of Shaul because of further mistakes. And when David comes onto the scene, as Shaul gets weaker and weaker, David is going to get stronger and stronger. But at this point, the rabbis have an understanding that this wasn't talking about him being king just yet, but his dynasty, his legacy behind him forever. So Jonathan will probably not inherit the throne, Shaul, but you might stay until then. But here he singles out that he says, he has sought himself for a man after his own heart. We know that's David. Okay? Where's David in the scene? He's being a good shepherd boy, not knowing anything else. Sometimes God's already singled you out long before you even knew you have a job. He's called you, He's preparing you, He's building you up. And somewhere out there, God's dealing with someone else who maybe made a mistake, and He said, I'm going to send someone and they're going to do the right thing. And you're sitting there asking God, well, what's my purpose? Or I'm sitting there looking at sheep, and I'm going to look after these sheep. And that's the end of it. Remember, as David was being prepared for a king, he was learning two valuable lessons. One, the king needs to be like a shepherd who looks after his flock. Number two, David was a military man. So he was going to be facing some giants in his life. Literal ones. And God prepared him how? What did David fight against? Lion and bear. Those things didn't just come per chance, they were preparation for him so that he would be ready to face Goliath.
Because you've got to have some serious strategy, a man against a lion, you know. Strategies that...
I think most men in this room, when I say most men, all men in this room would panic quite badly.
You wouldn't have to think about how am I going to tackle this thing now, so I'm just going to hightail it out.
He was probably 10 years old.
So he probably had it figured out.
Not figured out, he had a big faith boost.
Yeah, but you know, I'm talking about the military sort of aspect of it, thinking that he's going to have to figure out how to...
Look at the way the enemy works. God prepares him by giving him a lion and a bear. Is that going to operate the same as a well-trained bear? No. A lion is going to attack one way, a bear is going to attack another. So there's no strategy.
Okay.
But God
But he's learning.
is constant. Right? So what he learns is that I will not let my flock go, and I will tackle anything, even if it's bigger than me, if it's stronger than me, God will give me the victory. What's the difference between a Goliath and a bear? Not much. What's the difference between a Goliath and a lion? Not much. They have claws and teeth, you have a sword. Sometimes those small victories that you face in your life, or the big ones, are preparation for what you're going to face later. And you have to learn that there's a constant thing. God is bigger than anything you'll face. Okay? Here he's already mentioned in passing, and he says, well, this is what's going to happen. This is Shaul's first big boo-boo. The army is leaving. His response? He made an offering he wasn't supposed to. He broke top. It was a king's job to uphold it. First major mistake. Okay? What's the time? Okay. So chapter 14. One day, Jonathan, the son of Shaul, said to the young man carrying his armor, come, let's go across to the garrison of the Philistine on the other side. This is the same guy who went to go assassinate someone else. Previously, kind of caused set up this massive war and people were freaking out. Here, Jonathan's on walkabout again. But he didn't tell his father. Shaul was waiting at the far edge of Gibeah under the pomegranate tree in Migron. Why a pomegranate tree? What does a pomegranate represent? Commandments. Okay, and remember, more seed, less flesh. It's more about life than it is about me, right? Okay. The force with him numbered about 600 men. Achia, the son of Achituv, Ichabod's brother, the son of Pinchas, the son of Eli, the Kohen of Adonai in Shiloh, was carrying a ritual vest. No one knew that Jonathan had gone. Who's carrying the ephod? Who's carrying the ephod?
High priest.
Alright, and who's the high priest?
The brother of.
Or the son of?
Well, I'm tracing it back from the one who died in the war.
Right.
So Eli had two sons. One of them.
It says here.
Okay.
Eli, if you read it backwards, it's like Eli and his son Pinchas and the son of Ichabod, right? The brother. Alright? So here we have this high priest. Where's Samuel? So maybe he operated in absence, or maybe they decided that of the same lineage, right? Which is right. What does Ichabod mean?
Without glory.
Without glory. Can you imagine being a high priest being called that? Ichabod's brother? The son of Achituv, Achia. So we get reminded of the son of Eli, of Hophni and Pinchas, through Ichabod and his family line. You with me? Okay? Here we have an absence of Shmuel here. It says in verse 4, between the passes by which Jonathan was trying to cross to the garrison of the Philistine, there was a rocky spur on either side and another rocky spur on either side, and the name of it was Botset, and the other Seneh. And the one spur rose atop the north in front of Michmas, and the other the south in front of Gibeah. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come on, let's go across the garrison of these uncircumcised people. Uncircumcised? What is it trying to tell you? Gentile. What does uncircumcised mean? Just that he's a Gentile. Right, he's out of covenant. I want you to understand that from God's viewpoint. If you're circumcised, you're in covenant. If you're uncircumcised, you're out. Does that make sense when we start talking about a Passover narrative? Right, same thing. Maybe Adonai will do something for us, since Adonai can rescue with a few people as easily as with many. Now, just a couple of minutes ago, we were chatting about this moment where the army was leaving and we were starting to panic because there were only a few left. What's the difference between Saul's faith and Jonathan's? He's saying, right, whether there's 10 of us or whether there's 500, if God wants it done, it's going to get done. Alright? Sorry, I lost my place. Verse 7. His armor bearer replied, do everything you think you should. I'm with you, whatever you decide. Jonathan said, here, we'll cross over to those men and let them know we're there. If they say, wait till we come to you, we'll stand still and stand still where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, we'll go up. That will be the sign that Adonai has given victory over them. Okay? So he wants to know that, again, Father, if they do it this way, then I'll know. But if they do it this way, then they won't. What does that sound like to you? Not just the Urim and the Tumim. There was someone previously who said, Father, I need to know whether or not I should go up. I'll give you a clue. It was against Midian, and there was only a small amount of men. Gideon, right? He put out a fleece. And God later in Judges chapter 6, in Judges chapter 7, after he gets the acknowledgement of the feast, God whittles down the number of men to 300. Right. What was Jonathan's statement? Whether we're little or whether we're much, he can do what he wants. Okay? So we see a type of Gideon type of idea. So both of them let their presence to be known to the garrison of the Philistine. The Philistine said, "Look, some Hebrews coming out of the holes they've been hiding in." Then the men of the garrison said to Jonathan and his armor bearer, "Come up to us, we want to show you something." Jonathan told his armor bearer, "Come on up after me, for Adonai has handed them over to Israel." Jonathan climbed up using his hands as well as his feet, with his armor bearer behind him. The Philistine fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer following him finished them off. Their first slaughter of about 20 men accomplished by Jonathan and his armor bearer in a space of only half as long as one side of the area of a pair of oxen would plow in a day, so in 200 yards. So what's that, 100 meters, he kills 20 guys. 2 guys. So they get up, they go, all right, let's do something, and they go with crazy odds in a short space, and by faith and with God's hand, they start to rout them. Remember, this is a garrison. Verse 15, there was panic in the field camp among all the Philistines. Likewise, the garrison and the raiding party panicked. Besides all this, there was an earthquake. Thus it grew into panic caused by God. Shaul's men on watch in Gibeath Benjamin could see the enemy camp was scattering and running in all directions. Shaul ordered the forces with him to call the roll and see who was missing. So they called the roll and found Jonathan and his armor bearer not present. Now you see the whole army. Remember, these guys were hiding in cisterns, trying to disappear off the face of the earth. You can't see us. And 2 guys pitch up and go running. And that whole army starts to panic. God throws in an earthquake just to let them know who they're trying to take on here. Can you imagine what that must have done for Jonathan's faith? You're fighting over there. You and this armor bearer taking on one person, where everybody else is too scared to go up against this army. And then all of a sudden there's this massive earthquake after you kill 20 men. And you know God is there. Again, we see something here. There's a big battle. One person stands out. In this case, it's 2. And the Philistines start to panic and run. Later, it's going to be similar scenarios, David and Goliath. Okay? Shaul told Achiab, "Bring the ark of God here at that time, the ark of God was with the people of Israel." But while Shaul was talking to the Kohen, the uproar in the camp of the Philistine continued and kept getting louder. Shaul said to the Kohen, "Put your hand down." Shaul and the entire forces with him assembled and went to battle. But they found the Philistines all fighting each other in utter confusion. The Hebrews from the surrounding countryside who had previously been with the Philistines had gone up with them into the camp, deserted and went over to Israel with Shaul and Jonathan. Likewise, on hearing that the Philistines were fleeing, all the men of Israel who had hidden themselves in the hills of Ephraim pursued them in battle. So Adonai saved Israel that day, and the battle spread as far as Beth-aven. Again, God causes victory against those who are not in covenant with him. It is not Shaul that leads the battle, but again, someone younger. I want you to see that he hesitates with them here, and he will hesitate with Goliath later. Israel's soldiers had been driven to exhaustion that day, but Shaul issued this warning to the people: "A curse on any man who eats any food until evening, when I will have finished taking vengeance on my enemies." So none of the people even tasted food. Now the people came to the forest where there was a honeycomb on the ground. When the people had entered the forest, they saw there the honeycomb with honey dripping out, but no one put his hand to his mouth because the people feared the oath. All right, where do we see in Torah that it says you're not allowed to eat when you're going into battle? Why would you make an oath like that, knowing that you're going to be fighting? That's like going on, or you're not allowed to have any water. But your hike is the whole day long, and you wonder why you're struggling halfway through. You see, he makes a rash vow. Alright, where Jonathan tested, Shaul doesn't. He makes a hasty decision. Okay? And here he puts pressure not only on himself but on everybody else. But Jonathan hadn't heard his father charging the people with the oath. Where was Jonathan? He was busy fighting the battle. He was in them while they were still deciding whether or not they were going to follow. So he put an end to, or put out an end of the staff in his hand, dipped it in the honeycomb and raised it to his mouth, whereupon his eyes lit up. But one of the people said in response, your father strictly charged the people with an oath, a curse on any man who eats any food today, even though the people are fainting with hunger. Jonathan answered, my father has brought trouble on the land. Just how look at my eyes have lit up, I tasted a little bit of honey. How much greater would the slaughter of the Philistine have been today than if the people had eaten freely of the spoil they found with their enemies? That day they attacked the Philistine from Michmas to Ayalon, but the people were very exhausted. From Michmas to Ayalon, where does the Ayalon valley come into play?
Was that where the sun just stood still?
Joshua 10, right? Joshua comes up against the Amorites, and there's a massive battle, and he needs more time to rout the enemies. And the sun stood still. God stops time. Now, just try and figure out the physics of that thing. If the sun is rotating, does everything else just stop if I hold the earth still? Or if the earth is rotating and then does the sun stop moving? What happens if the earth stops rotating? Gravity disappears. Does everything else just stop moving because of one thing? No. So we have God creating that which He had created, He holds still. Every single thing. Now planets are rotating, we're rotating, everything's on orbit, and then He goes, stop. Joshua needs more time. Am I the only one that gets like completely bamboozled about how everything worked at that moment? We're dealing with a God who not only can deal with your situation, but He can stop everything and hold it together just at a word. He can keep your feet planted without gravity. You're not just sitting in a situation where everything is held together by His word, for His word, and you are there for His purpose. These battles that you face right now are already guaranteed victory. He just wants to show you or remind you that He's still in control. We make God too small. He's so much bigger than that. We struggle sometimes looking at the situation, looking at the enemy, looking at the problem, and we go, I don't know how we're going to get past this. And God's going, hello? I spoke the universe into creation. I think I can deal with you. The question is, are we learning the lessons we need to learn at that time? If I came into the Ayalon Valley, I should have stopped and thought, and this is where Joshua was. God gave us a great victory then, He'll do it now. Here, but because of a vow Shaul made in haste, we again, He's putting strain on His people. Verse 32 says, the people rushed at the spoil, seizing sheep, cows, and calves, slaughtered them on the ground and eating the flesh with the blood. So what happens when I jump the gun? People, are affected because of an oath. People are affected here because of an offering. What happens? Same response. They break Torah. They're not even trying to slaughter the animal properly. They're not waiting for it to cook. So they're eating the meat, or they're eating it with the blood. He said, you have not kept faith. Roll a big stone to me immediately. Now Shaul said, go around among the people and tell them, each of you is to bring his cow and his sheep and slaughter them there. Then eat. Don't sin against Adonai by eating with the blood. So each person brought his animal with him that evening and he killed it there. Shaul erected an altar to Adonai. It was the first altar that he erected to Adonai. Now isn't that a weird reason? What is the reason he's erecting an altar to God? Why did he put that altar there? Was it to give God glory, or was it for people to slaughter, cook and eat? So was it about pleasing God, or was it about people pleasing? Same issue. It's not about giving God glory. It's about making sure, and in this case, maybe Shaul is, maybe we're being a bit critical. He saw them breaking a mitzvah, but he put that yoke upon them by saying they shouldn't eat until this is done. And this is what we get. So maybe he tries to rectify it. But then, it's a bit late. Shaul said, let's go after the Philistine by night. We'll plunder them until dawn. We won't leave one of them alive. So with Joshua, we see the day being extended. Here we're going to go into night. They answered, do whatever seems good to you. But the Kohen said, let's approach God here. Shaul consulted God. Should I go down to pursuit of the Philistine? Will you hand him over to Israel? But he didn't answer him that day. Shaul said, come here, all of you heads of the people. Think carefully, who has committed a sin today? So he's not taking ownership of his decisions again. Now he's going to try and figure out what's going on. For as Adonai, Israel's deliverer, lives, even if it proves to be Jonathan, my son, he must be put to death. Now, isn't that a little bit ironic? He had no problem transgressing Torah because his army was leaving a chapter before, and now he says, well, even if it's Jonathan, I'll have him killed. When someone else messes up, we bring judgment, but when it's me, oh well, you know, I was forced, I didn't really know, I didn't know what was going on, and we make excuses. It says, but no one among all the people answered him. Then he said to all Israel, you be on one side, and I and Yonatan, my side, will be on the other side. And the people replied to Shaul, do what seems good to you. Shaul said to Adonai, the God of Israel, who is right? Yonatan and Shaul were chosen by lot, and the people went free. Shaul said, cast lots between me and Yonatan, my son. Yonatan was chosen. Then Shaul said to Yonatan, tell me what you did. Yonatan told him, I tasted a little honey at the end of the staff in my hand. Here I am, I'm ready to die. Why would he use honey here? Why would honey be the very thing that's supposed to send him to his death? What does honey represent? Torah. May your word be as sweet as honey in my mouth. Right? And there's a funny little word play. How many of you know the word for bee in Hebrew? I'll give you a clue. It's in Judges 4. Deborah. Right, okay? Deborah. And there's a funny little word play. There's a book called Devarim. So, words, bees, and honey all have a similar sort of play. Right? So, God's word that he had spoken will be as sweet as honey in your mouth. Where do you get it? You get it from bees. You see the word play? Okay? So what he brings in here is he said, what should have been a decree from God and sweet for us to invigorate us that God had sent us into battle, now all of a sudden becomes my death sentence. That which should have been good and of God, which he saw when he said, if they say go up, we'll go up, God is with us. The earthquake happens, and Shaul puts on an oath that should never have been. Again, if he was the one at the head of the battle, it might have been different. But he was always hanging back. Shaul said, my God, do the same to me and more also if you are not put to death, Jonathan. But the people said to Shaul, must Jonathan die who had accomplished this great deliverance in Israel? Heaven forbid. As Adonai lives, not one hair on his head will fall to the ground because he had worked with God today. In this way the people rescued Jonathan so that he didn't die. Then Shaul stopped pursuing the Philistine, and the Philistine returned to their own territory. Let's add a little addendum to our boo-boo. According to his word, according to his oath, Jonathan should be dead, right? Okay? Who saves him? The people say no.
And he obeys.
And Shaul goes, okay. Who's controlling who here? Is the king supposed to lead or the people controlling the king? We're going to get set up to the point here in chapter 15 where he's going to do something and eventually Shmuel is going to hit the heart of the matter. Okay? You guys still awake? Still got time? Alright, chapter 15. Shmuel said to Shaul, Adonai sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. Now listen to what Adonai has to say.
Wait. You skipped 47.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, am I jumping?
Yes.
Okay, my bad. Verse 47. I'm very excited about the next chapter. So Shaul took over the rulership of Israel. He fought against the enemies on every side, against Moab, the people of Ammon, Edom, the kings of Tzova, and the Philistine. No matter which way he turned, he defeated them. So even though he got it wrong, God was still with him. He demonstrated his strength by attacking Amalek, and he saved Israel from the power of those who were plundering them. The sons of Shaul were Jonathan, Yishvi, Malchishua, while the names of his two daughters were these. The name of the older one, Merav, and the younger, Michal. Shaul's wife was Achinoam, the daughter of Achimaatz, the commander of his army was named Avner, the son of Ner, Shaul's uncle. Kish was the father of Shaul, Ner the father of Avner, and Avner was the son of Abiel. As long as Shaul lived, there was bitter war against the Philistine. Whenever Shaul saw any strong or courageous man, he recruited him to the service. Alright, so I'm sure all of you have very studiously looked at the nameplates that you have over there. What is a Ner?
I got the wrong spelling. Is it the N-U-R?
N-E-R?
See, that's when you don't use the CJ.
What is a Ner? What is Aviel?
Aviel is my father is God.
My father is God, or yeah, my father God. Ner? Google.
No.
Lamp, light, candle. Okay? What else have we got there? Achinoam? Noam? Naomi? My pleasant brother? Yes? Naomi? Pleasantness?
Beauty, but okay.
Okay? And so we go on. Since you guys are busy looking at your phone very studiously, I expect next week you'll have a little bit of a response to that. Do the sentence and try and see, at this point, why does he all of a sudden break into a genealogy? Alright? Shoni will not save you right now. Shmuel said to Shaul, Adonai sent me to anoint you king over his people, over Israel. Now listen to what Adonai has to say. Here is what Adonai Tzebaot says. I remember what Amalek did to Israel, how they fought against Israel when they were coming up from Egypt. When was that?
In the time of the arm.
Right, it should be very real to you. You guys are walking in that time, right? And remember who went out to go fight?
Joshua.
Right, and who was up on the mountain? Moses, her, and Aaron. Right, and we learned that interceding helped them win the victory that day. Okay? Here he said then he's gonna deal with the Amalekites, and yeah, Shaul, you're the guy that I'm gonna use. The time has now come. Isn't it amazing? From the time of the wanderings until now. Why does God only deal with him now?
Could be a picture that God's king carries out his justice.
Okay.
Yeshua's going to do that one day.
Yeah, nice link. What else?
We gave them
Remember, they had the time of the wanderings, they had the time of Joshua, they had a roughly 360-year period of judges. We come to the end of Judges with the last judge, really Shmuel, before we get to the first king. And he says, now we're going to deal with it. And what do we find the Amalekites still doing?
Still attacking.
Still attacking, still raiding, no change. How many hundreds of years does he wait for people to get the idea that this is a bad idea? Judgment will come. Don't think that it doesn't. If you don't change, there's going to be problems. We see this again later with the Edomites. Obadiah speaks against them and he says, that's it. How many times have you have to go against me? How many times have you pushed your luck? How many times did you attack my people instead of help them? The Edomites ceased to exist. We do not have any lineage after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. They're gone. God tells people that if you do not get your act together, there is a finality in his judgment. He is patient, he is merciful, but that only works as if you change. If you don't, you're heading to destruction. He's trying to save you, you refuse to be saved. He says in verse 3, now go and attack Amalek and completely destroy everything they have. Don't spare them, but kill men and women, children, babies, cows, sheep, camels and donkeys. And this is the part where you normally close your ears and go, God of the Old Testament, and I'm freaked out. Right? How can you serve a God who does these things? He's so mean and vengeful and judgmental, and I just don't understand it. ... Why? My Torah observant brethren, why? This is the same God who says slow to anger, full of mercy and grace, who's given his people probably over 400 years of grace before they do anything, so that he can get them to change, but they refuse to. So why then do I get to punish the children?
the sins of the parents go down to the
Can any person, can you be punished? Can I lock you up for your mommy's mistake? Does God not tell you that you will not,
They don't believe the same with their parents, because that's how they were raised.
okay, well if they believe and then they're going to make a choice, so you're going to say, okay, we're going to stop this perpetual cycle because what you see in your house is what you're going to choose. Okay? But what have they done to deserve this?
The weaker people.
Who were the weaker at the back?
Trouble dad is actually.
Who, you're on the right track, who was the weaker at the back?
The women and children.
Ah. So those people that you had been raiding, that you have been attacking, that you have been cutting down, that you have been selling, that you have been whatever, that you have been doing without pity, without mercy, You have been doing this for 4 to 500 years, and you've not once considered that your actions would be repeated on your family. What did the Israelites say? We don't want to go up, and when the 12 spies came in, we don't want to go up because our children, they'll eat them alive, they won't be able to inherit the land. That generation passed and the children did come up and inherit that land, right? The sins of the fathers have to make this, you have to understand this dynamic that he's dealing with here. As you had done, this measure which you used, you took no pity on anybody else. Now why would I pity yours? If you really loved your children, you wouldn't play this game. If you really loved your wives, you wouldn't do this. Because what you do, what measure you dish out, how you love other people, how you deal with them. Let's make it a simple narrative without the death in the room. One day you might be in a situation where you have a little bit of money and you can go out and you can help someone. Because maybe you've got extra and you've got kids, and your thought process would be, 1, this will glorify my Father. 2, I'm meeting someone else's need. 3, if I was in that same situation, I would want someone to help me. We need to understand, God forbid, maybe 3 or 4 generations down the line, your kids are the ones that are really struggling, and someone who's wealthy steps up and goes, you know what, actually your family helped my family a good few generations ago. My parents always spoke about it, and we were just waiting for the right time to pay you back in kindness, and here it is. The Amalekites have been a pain to people all around that region. It wasn't just the Israelites. How many children were taken and sold as cattle? And they didn't even flinch. And here God says, enough's enough. You had no pity, I will give you none. You understand? It's not that God is just going out and he goes, well, that's it, I'm just going to deal with the kids because they were guiltless. This is generation upon generation repeating the same thing. This is Pharaoh making another Pharaoh, stubborn and obstinate and standing before God and telling him he's nothing. God says, no, I'm dealing with this thing and I'm going to deal with it now. Shaul summoned the people and reviewed them at Talim, 200,000 foot soldiers with another 10,000 men from Yehudah. Shaul arrived in the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. That is such a sneaky point of phrase, is that because that is exactly what they would do. Ambush, tackle the weak when they least expect it, hit them hard. They lay in wait. Shaul said to the Keni, go away, withdraw, leave your homes there with the Amalekites. Otherwise I might destroy you along with them, even though you were kind to all the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt. Why? Who are the Kenites? Why? What kindness did they show Israel? Someone go to Judges 4:11 and see what you find there. There's about 3 or 4 references, they all say the same thing, so I'm only giving you one. Judges 4:11.
Was it that woman that killed Sisera?
When you're there, someone read.
Now there the Keni had cut himself off from the rest of Hayan, descendants of Hua, Moshe's father-in-law, which I'm assuming was Jethro. He had pitched his tent near the oak at which is close to Kadesh. Sisera was informed that Barak, the son of had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera routed his chariots, all 900 chariots, and all the troops he had with him.
You don't have to worry about the rest. Who was it in the beginning? The Kenani, who was related to who? Jethro, Hobab, okay, he carries two different names in scripture. Interesting study why. So this is, he's saying, you were kind to us. What did Jethro do in Exodus 18? Tell me them who have been studying the Omer studiously. After Amalekites, Jethro and them came, and who did he bring with? Right, Zipporah and his sons. And it was restitution of family. And what else did Jethro do for them? He helped them do what? Yes, it says, take a little bit of advice, ask God about it, and let's see. And he got Moses to set up different leaders to help the nation. He showed him kindness. He saw that they were struggling, and he was there. Versus the Amalekites. Here you have Amalekites and you have the Kenani again. This is Exodus 17 and 18 being repeated in one statement. Okay? It says, so the Kenani went away from among the Amaleki, and then Shaul attacked Amalek, starting at Havilah and continuing towards Shur at the border of Egypt. Sound familiar? As you left Egypt, they got attacked. He took Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, but he completely destroyed the people, putting them to the sword. However, Shaul and the people spared Agag. Shaul and who? Here we are again. Along with the best of the sheep and cattle, even the second best, also the lambs and everything that was good. They weren't inclined to destroy these things, but everything that was worthless or weak, they completely destroyed. So God says, go in there and burn everything up, and you walk into town and you see, well, this is the king, and yes, we've got him, and he has a couple of Bentleys, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, and you're just like, man, why do we have to destroy this car? And there's a Mazda 323, and you're like, no, we can burn that. Why are we keeping the best? The best is for who? Supposed to be for God. Now, if I did what he said, it was obeying his order, because this was supposed to be everything one-time deal. That which they stole wasn't just people, it was cattle and stuff too. Missing the lesson. They got rid of the stuff they really didn't want to need, but the stuff they saw with their eyes, they hold on to. Then the word of Adonai came to Shmuel, I regret setting up Shaul as king. Where do we see that word where God says, I regret something? Genesis 6 verse 6, when he's talking about Noah, in the time of Noah, he regrets making man. Now I want you to let that sink in. He looks at his creation and he goes, I think I made a mistake. He looks at his king and he goes, I think I made a mistake. How dark is it where in wordplay God reminds us of the time of Noah, and he says it's exactly like Shaul, the people will do what the people want to do. Because he has turned away from following me and hasn't obeyed my orders. This made Shmuel very sad, that he cried out to Adonai all night. There's a funny little parallel. Samuel intercedes on behalf of Saul. Noah, we never see interceding on behalf of anybody. It's a weird play. Shmuel got up early in the morning to meet Shaul. However, Shmuel was told, Shaul came to Carmel to set up a monument for himself there. Carmel? Later there's a prophet who takes on a king and his prophets at Carmel. Who am I talking about? Elijah. Here we have a prophet and a king, except the king is setting up an image of who? Himself. But now he had left and is on his way down to Gilgal. Shmuel Shmuel went to Shaul. Shaul said to him, May Adonai bless you. I have done what Adonai ordered. But Shmuel answered, if so, why do I hear sheep bleating and cows mooing? This guy was quite shocked. Shahu said, they brought them from the Amaleki because the people spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to Adonai your God. Adonai your God. But we completely destroyed the rest. Then Shmuel said to Shaul, stop. I'm going to tell you what Adonai said to me last night. He said, speak, Shmuel said. You may be, now listen to this carefully. You may be small in your own sight, but you are the head of the tribes of Israel. Adonai anointed you king over Israel. Let's pause. Now let's play this in your head. He's just set up a monument unto himself on Karmel. He's head and shoulders above everybody else, size-wise. And Shmuel goes straight to the heart of the matter and he says, you are small in your own sight.
So he's insecure.
Why? Now we understand why he's people pleasing. Because he might be the biggest guy in the room, but he's nervous. What happens if the people don't like me? What happens if I'm not strong enough? What happens if I'm not smart enough? What happens if I'm not good looking enough? What happens if I'm... Now when God calls you to do something, how many of you are stopping and you're going, you got the wrong guy? Does God make mistakes? So if He called you, if He's equipped you, if He's standing in front of you and He says, you are this, what is your response supposed to be? If God calls you a teacher, then be a teacher. I don't care if you feel like it or you don't. That's what you are in His sight, so be it so that He can flow through you. If He calls you a prophet, be it. Stop pretending like you're not. If He calls you a disciple, be it. Stop hanging back. That's how He sees you, and that's what He's going to hold you accountable to. I need you to pay attention. If you walk away from your calling, there is only going to be scars and scattering behind you. If you do not step up to your responsibility to your calling, the people behind you are the ones that are going to suffer. Who dies on the hill with Saul? His children. The nation. What did Jonathan do? Except follow God. Did he deserve that? If his father was obedient and kept going forward, it would not have affected the nation it did, the way it did. Now, if you are called to make disciples, you are called to be a disciple, you are called to be Christ-like, don't tell God. No. Listen to what He says. You may be small in your own sight, but you are head of the tribes of Israel. Let me change it. You might think yourself insignificant, but you are a son and a daughter of the Most High. Stop running away from your responsibility. It is your job to own it. And if you do not follow the mitzvah, what happens? Other people suffer. Let it sink. You think it's everybody else's responsibility to reflect God while you sit there ignoring your call. It's your job to put on tzitzit every morning. It's your job to pitch up for Shabbat service. It's your job to read your Bible. It's your job to reflect God. It's no one else's commission. Everyone has their own. I can't put on tzitzit for Richard. Richard has to put on tzitzit for him. Because when I step up and I take hold of my calling, whether I feel like I'm a teacher or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is what God does through me to help other people. You with me? Now, Adonai sent you on a mission. I want you to personalize this a little bit. He's sending you on a mission. You only have to make disciples of all nations. But to do that, you have to first be a disciple. You have to own up and take hold of the instructions that He's given you and do them one by one, applying what you can. Stop running away from it. People get hurt when you do. This is not just you. He told you, go and completely destroy Amalek. Those sinners keep making war on them until they have been exterminated. The chapter before, He wanted them to fight all the way into the night. And then He didn't, because He put restraints on His own people. Here again, He's just missing the mark. Why did you seize the spoil instead of paying attention to what Adonai said? From Adonai's viewpoint, pause. It doesn't matter what your intentions are, it doesn't matter what your feelings are. What matters is, what does God see you doing? You can think you're right, but I tell you, if God says you're wrong, you're wrong. You can justify it until you're purple. It's not going to make a change. You don't want to stick out. You don't want to be weird. You don't want people to figure out really who you are and what you're supposed to be. You want to get away with doing things without people really paying attention. But the reality is, God's watching every second of every minute of every day. You have an opportunity to fulfill the instructions in front of people for your God, because that's who you belong to. I was having a discussion with someone today about tzitzit. And they were a little bit hesitant. Struggling a little bit with what that meant. And I said, we've got a couple of problems with people who don't want to put on tzitzit. Number one is they normally think you have to be perfect. You don't. What does the instruction tell you about wearing tzitzit?
So that you will look them to God.
Right. If I'm perfect, do I need a reminder? No. They're there so that I can strive to do something. Okay? What other issues do I have? Why do I hesitate for fulfilling a mitzvah? Why don't I want to wear tzitzit? Because other people are going to know who I am. I don't want to stick out. Or I want to get away with stuff. There was someone who once said, who was doing something that wasn't exactly Christian-like, enjoyed having contentious discussions with people, knowing that they can give them a bit of stick, wasn't out of love. And then we spoke about tzitzit, and then their first response was, well, if I put on tzitzit, I can't act like that. My response was, well, surely that's an indication that you should probably stop acting like that. So you want to get away with stuff. Simple culmination is very simply, God is asking you to wear something that tells you that you belong to Him. I equated it to this person. It's a wedding ring. If someone you love bent down on one knee and offered you up a ring and said, will you be mine, how many of you would hesitate? No, yes please, this is what I've wanted, thank you very much. Bloop, put it on, and then you walk around like this for the next couple of weeks. You get married, you put it on, you're very proud that you are so and so. Why do we hesitate when God hands out tzitzit in a sense, and He looks at you and He goes, will you be mine? How can I not be proud of that? The issue is simply put, if I love Him, I'll put it on. Why are we ignoring the instruction to please people? Why are we ignoring the instructions so that we can try and get away with stuff? He's going to get closer. Where am I?
19.
Oh, okay, thank you. Why did you... okay, we said that, right? Why did we seize the spoil instead of paying attention to what Adonai said? From Adonai's viewpoint, you have done an evil thing. Shaul said to Shmuel, I did too pay attention to what Adonai said, and I carried out the mission on which Adonai sent me. This, again, is a very quick justification. When God says, why did you do it wrong? You go, no, but I didn't. Let me give you another quick little poke. Shabbat. I keep Sabbath, I sit at home. Is that keeping Shabbat? No, it's a holy convocation according to Leviticus 23. If you were a Talmud, you're supposed to be focusing on your God, supposed to be in a synagogue studying scripture so that you can better understand Him. It is a day to convocate. That means that you gather with like-minded believers so that you can better understand Him. Sitting at home is not keeping Sabbath. You're fulfilling one piece of the instruction. I destroyed everything, all the ugly stuff, but we kept the good ones. Did you fulfill the instruction, yes or no? Don't pick apart the sections which you like and ignore the ones that you don't. Guys, that's what got us so much confusion today. You can pick any congregation around the world and they can tell you why they don't do certain instructions anymore. And I'm not just talking about, well, the temple's not there, this doesn't apply because I'm not a king or a Levite. I'm talking about, I'll do 9 of the 10 commandments and we'll ignore the other one. You don't get to ignore it again once your eyes have been opened. You get to keep it. I did too pay attention to what Adonai said, and I carried out the mission on which Adonai sent me. I brought back Agag, the king of Amalek, and completely destroyed Amalek. But the people took some of the spoil and the best of the sheep and the cattle were set aside for destruction to sacrifice to Adonai your God in Gilgal. Shmuel said, does Adonai take much pleasure in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying what he says? Normal translation is obedience not better than sacrifice. Don't just tick the box and say you're going to give God what you want while you do something that you know he told you not to do. Surely obeying is better than sacrifice, and heeding orders than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of sorcery, stubbornness like the crime of idolatry. If you refuse to yield to your king, he says you are being like an idolater. Why? Right, because you do not bow your neck to this God. You might as well be worshipping another. Now those are pretty strong words. I'm not talking as someone who is a child who's still trying to figure out what a tzitzit is. I'm talking to someone who understands the instruction, understands why they're there, and still refuses to do it. You understand Shabbat, but you ignore it. Is this about God or is it about you? If he says you're a teacher, if he calls you a shepherd, if he calls you a prophet, is this about you or is it about him? I'm not doing this or saying this to pick on you. I don't want to poke things, but I'm telling you that these are the words for people who do half obedience, who refuse the instruction. If this is poking you, it's because God is poking you. Because you have rejected the word of Adonai, he too has rejected you as king. Shaul said to Samuel, I have sinned, I violated the order and your words too, because I was afraid of the people and listened to what they said. Finally, we're getting somewhere. Now please pardon my sin and come back with me so that I can worship Adonai. But Shmuel said to Shaul, I will not go back with you because you have rejected the word of Adonai. and Adonai has rejected you as king of Israel. Can you imagine the anguish? Shmuel has been praying the whole night. He gets there, he's pulling his hair out, he's frustrated. You were supposed to be good. Why are you people pleasing? As Shmuel was turning around to leave, he took hold of the hem of his cloak and it tore. That word in Hebrew is the kanaf. The kanaf is the corner. What's on the corner of an observant man? He grabs hold of the Torah. He grabs hold of God's name. He grabs hold of the kingdom in which he is supposed to represent, the kingdom of heaven. And it tears. Just like the kingdom is being teared from him. Shmuel said to him, Adonai has torn the kingdom of Israel away from you today and given it to your a fellow countryman of yours, who is better than you. Moreover, the eternal one of Israel will not lie or change his mind, because he isn't a mere human being subject to changing his mind. Isn't this just a little bit of a poke of Shahu? I said I'm going to do it this way, and then when it comes down to it, I decide otherwise. Then Shaul said, I have sinned. But in spite of that, why is he even arguing? I think by now you probably should be in a puddle of your own tears, wrenching out your heart like maybe Peter did. But listen to what he says. Show me respect now before the leaders of my people and before Israel by coming back with me, so that I can worship Adonai your God. Let's put on a show one last time. Don't let the people have an issue with this. So Shmuel followed Shaul back, and Shaul worshipped Adonai. Then Shmuel said, bring Agag, the king of Amalek, here to me. Agag came to him in chains and said, without a doubt, mine will be a bitter death. Shmuel said, just as your sword has left woman childless, so will your mother be left childless among women. Then Shmuel cut Agag in pieces before Adonai in Gilgal. Shmuel returned to Ramah, and Shaul went up to his house in Gibeat Shaul. Never again did Shmuel see Shaul until the day he died. But Shmuel grieved over Shaul, and Adonai regretted again that he had made Shaul king of Israel. Now, does this where the story end with Agag?
No, but I have two questions.
Before we get there.
No, he has a descendant. Eventually, Haman comes from
Which story?
in Esther.
Right. So, in Esther, because we don't deal with Amalek in its fullness, there's a thought. Again, I'm just going to write your people pleasing for the sake of the notes. Is that some believe that they kept him in rights as a king. So he had his concubines with him, maybe a wife or so, and then, or was able to impregnate someone in the time it took from Shmuel to get to Shaul, and his lineage carried on. And before we look again, we're sitting with an Esther problem. A man by the name of Haman, who is a descendant who's called an Agagite. Someone as a direct link from Agag. He's not a descendant of Amalek per se, he's the descendant of Agag. So from his lineage, and his complete and utter hatred for Mordecai. And we see this push and pull being continued. If Shaul had listened, we wouldn't have an Esther story. God wouldn't have had to save them. They wouldn't have had to fight. They wouldn't have had that despair. What you refuse to do now will affect people for generations. But if we obey, if we stand up, if we grab hold of it, if we own it, There's positive that counts. You with me? Alright. So, 2 questions.
The first one is so in reading these chapters I still got confused because my confusion was if God knew that Saul was going to end up being the way he was, why did he allow Saul to, I mean he could have gone straight to David and David could have been the first king of Israel. Why did God allow Saul to be king?
Why did Yeshua choose Peter now that he would deny him?
Just God's purpose, you already know.
Right? Sometimes he'll give everybody. The difference between Peter and Judas, right, is there's an opportunity for someone to acknowledge the fault within themselves and make repentance. And they break the cycle. Other people, it's all about themselves and then they break themselves. Could Judas say that I never had a fair chance? How far will God go to try and save one man? He will meet him at his need every time. Did God want Shaul to succeed? Yes. Did he want him to look past the fact of his own insecurity, his own smallness and go, you know what, I'm king of Israel not because of any person but because God chose me. How can I deny that? And if that's what he says I am, then that's what I will be. And I will leave him to decide who's right. One day you might be running a congregation, you might be running a home cell. I pray that you guys all will. And you're going to be standing there in front of them and someone might look at you and go, well, I don't really think that stuff applies. Or I don't really think that this is important. Or I don't really think you're a very good ... Now you are either going to take solace from the fact that God chose you and has appointed you, and as far as you can see you're sticking to his text, or you can start to shift your interpretation of what God says and you can make them happy. Well, you know, your marriage has been over for a while. They've moved on, you moved on, and it's really just a piece of paper. So, you know, if you get together with someone else, it's really, you know, it's just a matter of time. Anyway, it's okay. Well, you know, the Bible, you know, leaves a little bit of room. It doesn't really talk about that stuff. So, you know, we can incorporate some of that theology in, and let's just see how we go. Can I share with you? I've pulled my hair out many times, hoping that I have not made a mistake. Watching people leave here. And I'm going, Father, you've sent them to me for me to be a vessel to help them understand you, and I must have messed up because they left. And those moments when I really just sat there and I said, Father, Lord, if I have, tell me so that I can fix it. But if I haven't, Father, work with them. I've had people coming here, try and teach me, leave because I don't listen. And God meets with that person, and a year later they're sitting at my table again going, I don't understand, help me out, because God showed me I don't have it all. There are moments where you are going to have to lean upon God, and you have a choice to make every day. I want you to take solace in the fact that He does not make mistakes. You're not going to have it all together. You're not going to have it figured out. If you think that you're only going to start observing instructions when you do, you're never going to get there. What we're going to do is we're going to hold on to the fact when God says this is who you are, this is how I see you, whether you feel like it or whether you don't, do me a favor, just do it anyway. Just grab hold of it, own it, and walk it. Because obedience is better than sacrifice. Don't tell God you worship Him and you sing all the praise and worships and you're ignoring the plain instruction that's in front of your face and He's telling you to do it and you're telling Him no. But I love God, I worship Him and I sing my praise and worship. No, you do what makes you feel good and then you ignore the fact that you're disobeying. God is giving you an opportunity, just like He gave Shahu. Just like He gave David, just like He gave Rehoboam, just like He gave Jeroboam, just like He gave Judas, just like He gave Peter, just like He gave John. Every person has an opportunity to become better than what they are. But you surrender that level of, I don't know what I'm supposed to be when this is all said and over. I want you to go to God and saying, make me what I'm supposed to be. If that means I have to dress funny, so be it. If that means I can't go out and I've got to sit in synagogue or sit with these crazy other believers, Father, that you say are my family, so be it. If that means that I don't aim for happiness, wealth, and all other things that come with it, but I focus on your word. If this is what it's about, that I fulfill the only commission I have. God never told you to go out and make money. God never told you to go out and make something more of yourself. He told you to go and make disciples. And the only action word in the Greek is make. It's not go. It is part of that make disciples. That is what you're supposed to be about until your King comes. You're supposed to be about your Father's business. But in order to make disciples, you first have to be a disciple. So grab hold of the instructions that are in front of you and put one foot in front of the other and get yourself to your next stage. Hopefully, God willing, those you love will be around you, will be there with you. If they're not, keep walking anyway. And let God get them to that next stage, because they have a decision that they have to make. Don't hang back for people. This is what that looks like. You don't hang back from your commission, your mission, your calling for anybody. You run the race and you run towards Yeshua and you pray that the Ruach will keep you lifted up every minute of every hour of every day. You cannot do this by yourself. And you are going to hit speed bumps and you're going to go to war and there are going to be forces that are going to come against you, including your own mind. Remind yourself you have been called, you have been chosen, you have an inheritance. You belong to the Father and He does not make mistakes. So whether you think you're worthy or not, it does not matter. Whether you think you're loved or not, it does not matter. What you think is irrespective. What He did for you is the point. He died for you. He chose you. He gave you His Spirit. How many more signs do you need that this is real? We don't get to be part-time disciples. We get to be passionate, we get to be diligent, we get to own our walk because it's a choice we make every day. Man, and if we do that right, maybe God will turn around and say, wow, those are my kids. You can tell. Look at how they love one another. Look at how they hunger and thirst for righteousness. Look how they focus that it's not about them, but it's about me in heaven. Look how they reflect me. And if I can get over myself long enough to keep my eyes focused on Him and the way He sees me and the smile on His face when someone looks and goes, that's what a believer is supposed to be. That's what Christ looked like. Even if we just get it right for a minute. Man, with this amount of people, God can do some really big things. You with me? Anything else? Okay. All right. Any comments? Will you guys pray with me? Do you want to stand? Father, we just want to thank you for your word. Father, we thank you that your word is honest and open. And Father, sometimes it's a little bit too close to home. But Father, I thank you that as you have said, you discipline those whom you love. Father, and we just want to thank you that we can look into other people's lives and realize where their mistakes lead before it's too late, Father. We don't want to repeat their mistakes. We don't want to make mistakes, Father. We really want to glorify you. Father, we want to be called sons and daughters of the Most High. But sometimes we look at ourselves and we realize how many shortcomings we have. How many times we get it wrong. How we don't know enough. How we're not good enough. And Father, all of those things are right. But there's one thing we have to come back to, Lord. Is that you've chosen us. That you've anointed us. And through your Ruach, Father, if we really press in, you will change us and help us to become better. Help us to become stronger spiritually. Help us to mature. Help us to be able to help others. Help us to be disciples and disciple others. Father, help them and be molded into your image. Father, we pray that we would truly act as sons and daughters of the Most High. We pray that we would take hold of your instructions. Father, that we would that they would bring the right joy, Father, to our hearts, that when we fulfill them. Help us not to be apprehensive. Help us to be bold. Help us to grab hold of it, Father, and say, here I am. Father, we know that's scary. For those who are taking the plunge, Father, for those who have been walking away for a while, Abba, we pray that you would give us the strength to be able just to do it. Just to put on those tzitzit, Father. Just to keep Shabbat the way it was. To honor your feasts and your festivals, Lord. Father, we want to thank you. We thank you for choosing us. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for being with us. Father, we just pray as we take stock in what you've done for us so far this week. We want to thank you. And we just pray that you continue to go ahead and come in behind. Father, meet us at our need. As we walk in obedience, Father, as we seek your kingdom and its righteousness, I pray that you would take care of our basic needs. And we just want to thank you that you protect us and guide us. In Yeshua's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.